This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Elson? Mr. Elson?
Paul, can you hear us? Ellie, if you could go on with the roll call, I'll come back to Mr. Elson in a minute.
Mr. Kimes?
Here.
Mr. Malagranda?
Here.
Mr. McKinnon?
Here.
Ms. Morgan is
Present.
absent?
Here.
Okay, that was Mr. Elson that said here.
Okay. Mrs. O'Rourke?
Here.
For guests, do I need to have a list? I've got what I think it is.
Right, so we have Mr. Malagranda present, we have Mr. Elson present, we have Mr.
Oh,
McKinnon,
yes.
we have Mr. Kimes present, Mrs. O'Rourke is present, and we just do not have Ms. Morgan present.
Right.
We do have a quorum trustees, but we also have a quorum of the Public Works Committee. First,
Yes, I'm here.
okay, thank you, Mr. Elson. We do have the authority to still meet remotely according to the extension of Governor Pritzker's executive order. And also that will extend through June 27th unless there's legislation approved. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I can't hear you.
Mr. Elson, if you can hear us, can you please put your phone on mute until you talk, because we have noise coming from through your phone. Could be because you're.
Here.
I just
Oh,
Got my thing on.
we do have your picture muted, but we don't have your microphone muted. Oh, there you are, Paul. Okay, so we can go on. Do we have any changes in the agenda? Did community development have the minutes ready for today's meeting?
No.
All right, so we will take number 2 off under consent agenda. Do we have any other changes in the agenda? Okay, hearing none, if we could have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
so moved, Julie.
All right, so Julie moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Times.
Thank you, Mr. Kimes, for identifying yourself. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, that carries. And if we can have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Hey, Frank, just, I guess we've got on here to approving the committee minutes. I don't know that they're ready for approval on the public works side.
Okay. We will take off Public Works meeting May 4, 2020 approval of minutes. So are we ready to approve Finance Committee meeting May 4, 2020 and Police Committee meeting April 29, 2020 minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so we need a motion to approve those two sets of minutes, please.
So moved, Julie.
Second,
Second, Stan Milligranda.
thank you, Stan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Frank, can I ask a procedural question on the minutes? 'Cause I think
Yes.
I'm a little confused.
Yep.
Why, with these approval of the minutes, I understand if the finance committee is approving, is that what you're saying? That the individual committees, if they're ready, are approving their individual committee minutes? Because if so,
Right.
then it would be done by members of each respective committee only.
So what we will do in the future is instead of having a consent agenda for the minutes, is we would just have the minutes under each committee's portion of the COW meeting or of their own individual meeting if we don't have a COW meeting.
Correct, because typically they've always approved their individual committee minutes at their individual committee meetings. And then when we have a COW meeting, it would seem to me that that would go, like you just said, under their individual committee. And then it's only those members of the respective committees that are voting on those committee minutes. And then the COW meeting minutes are voted by the full board at a board meeting.
Correct. So what we will do is have a consent agenda for the Finance Committee. And we do have two members of the Finance Committee here. I believe Mr. Elson and Mrs. O'Rourke are here. So if we could have a motion from one of you and then a second from one of you, please.
I'll make the motion to approve the finance minutes.
And then Mr. Elson, would you second that? Mr. Elson, can you hear us? All right. Mr. Elson, can you hear? What we'll do is we'll pass the minutes, Finance Committee meeting minute approval. If we can have a motion from Police Committee.
So moved. Don?
All right,
Second,
so,
Julie.
and Julie seconded. We could have the Police Committee members then vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so that's unanimous approval. So we do have approval of the Police Committee meeting minutes for April 29th, 2020. We'll need to have Public Works, Community Development, and Finance Committee meeting have their minutes approved at their next scheduled committee meeting. We had no one sign up for public comment. So at this time, let's go to Public Works, and Mr. McKinnon, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, first thing, I guess, is still on the minute approval, because I had intended to, discuss that as an item of business, and then I think it got moved up until the consent agenda. So that way there we could at least find out at this particular point in time if it were there and needed to be corrected. Because I do know I did receive some feedback from Attorney Gaziano of two typographical errors in the Public Works minute. One is I misspelled Kelly's name and need to add an E. And the second would be is to correct the spelling of language. Is there any other errors that anybody else in the Public Works Committee noted on the minutes?
Mr. Elson, negative.
No. Stan?
So procedurally, would it be pertinent that we can go ahead and make the approval on the minutes at this point. As part of the committee and not the overall call.
Generally, that would be the appropriate thing, is for the committee to approve it. It's technically not on the agenda items.
Well, it was,
But-
if we would have just simply taken it out of the consent agenda to discuss within the committee.
Yep. So I would go ahead and proceed with the approval.
I don't see that as a problem because had Mr. McKinnon had the opportunity to say, all right, we're ready to approve our minutes, but we just have a couple of corrections, we would have done it, I think, at the same time that we did the other one. So I don't see that as a problem.
Right.
So do we have a motion from the representative of the committee to approve the minutes?
Also moved.
Dan Milligrand,
I got
second.
a motion and I got Mr. Malagranda on the second. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Just procedurally, Frank, are you going to have it that those are moved, a motion to move those down, or that we're just considering them under the consent agenda?
It was a motion, I believe Mr. McKinnon wanted it moved down to the committee.
Okay.
And so it's moved under the committee and then it's being approved by the committee members.
Okay.
Did I miss the vote?
Not yet.
Okay.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Hearing no comments, I've got a motion by trustee Elson and a second by trustee Malagranda. All those in the committee in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. So the minutes pass. Okay, next item on the agenda is the construction funding report. As we still kind of get into our rotation on this, I don't have an updated report from Sally. Sally, is there anything unusual that's occurred since the last discussion that you'd like to bring up for the committee?
Sorry, I totally forgot about that. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay, that's fine. I know it was only a few weeks ago, and I think the only activity that we've probably had would be whether or not we've seen an invoice from Civil, or whether that will, come when all the work is complete. We'll talk about that one down at a line item on the street projects. Chad, are you aware if we've had any additional feedback from Fair Graham relative to the potential opportunity for grant funds on the water main project?
Basically, just some email circulation at next week's meeting. I think Frank's going to bring up just a few things, basically letters of support that are drafted that he may have already signed or is in the process of signing, things that help with the acquisition. And then secondly, just verification that we would have our matching funding available. Between Frank, Kelly, and myself, we've done most of the responses that Seth needs, but there is a timeline that Seth has laid out to Frank, myself, and Kelly. One of the items was the advertisement for the public hearing. I believe that made its way to the paper. It would have been in the paper Saturday, and would have advertised the public hearing before the appropriate meeting date. That's basically just the ball is in motion, and I believe we're all doing the things we need to do.
Okay, and we may have more to update at the board meeting next week on that. Most of what we have here are just simple updates. There's no really significant action. We basically have work in process that is going on both the water system upgrade for the water meters as well as the SCADA software. We have had some communication with the meter folks or whatever as far as the necessary information to get the software activities moving back and forth. Either Carrie or Chad, do you have any additional updates on that?
Yeah, again, the ball is moving in slow motion. The hardware side is in the ordering phase. It has been ordered. Execution of those documents has happened. We are still, Sally and myself, and as this week progresses, we'll be ironing out that integration cost from Tyler Technologies. We've approved our monetary amount, dollar amount. And again, through some email traffic today, Sally and I are going to talk a little further and find out how we can depict between what is going to be a new charge, what supersedes existing charge on that integration scale. So again, that work is moving slowly at a snail's pace, but it has forward motion.
Okay, thank you. And any change in status on the SCADA?
Kelly has worked with us to get government funded pricing or government pricing, state bid, if you will, through our provider, CDW. And we're just getting the final blessing from the SCADA folks on the hardware. The software work is being done behind the scenes. Again, everything due to COVID and everything else, snail's pace, but forward motion.
Bear with me a second. I'm just taking myself some notes here. Okay, item number 5 is street projects. The paving has been completed on McDamon, or a portion of McDamon, which was all that was planned to do. Any outlook time-wise, Chad, on when the chip sealing will be done on the other areas?
It sounds like it'll be late this week if the weather cooperates.
Okay, Highlands Development, Attorney Gaziano just sent us all an email here just in maybe 30 minutes before the meeting as far as the status. Mary, would you just kind of maybe give a quick overview of what the status is for those that haven't had a chance to read that email yet?
Sure. What you were sent was a copy of the complaint for permanent injunction and or other relief against Mantle Development Group that has been e-filed with the court. And basically what you'll see, it's approximately with the exhibits, it's about 90 pages. And basically what we're asking is that there be a permanent injunction against Mantle Development Group from selling any of their property until they make good on what they were supposed to do. And it's laid out in there what they were supposed to do. Or that they put up an irrevocable letter of credit. And then so with that being filed, and before I talk about the summons, which will come next, I do want to especially thank Chad and Seth and Sally Bennett. Sally Bennett, if you look at the last exhibit, that is Group Exhibit M. That's the last piece we needed. That had to do with when you'll recall the Village of Winnebago put up a street lamp by the condos because some residents had expressed concern, and we wanted to add that to the complaint as just one more thing, because Seth had put together the numbers for us, but it wouldn't have included that. What'll happen now is I have talked to the private process server again, who I had talked in New Zealand, and he is his price has not changed. He will locate or confirm the location based on what I gave him of Dr. Tanner, and then I am sending this to him with the summons as soon as that location's confirmed for service. There will also be service on the registered agent, Attorney Art Keelty, but I don't want him served until I know that we're ready and we are in the midst of serving Dr. Tanner, because I'm concerned that Dr. Tanner will then avoid service. What will happen before any of that is that tomorrow I'll be filing a Liz Pendens notice, which means notice of pending suit. What the benefit of that is that will be recorded at the Winnebago County Recorder's Office against any of the lands still owned by Mantle Development in Winnebago Highlands. That should prevent them, for if they want to go to try to sell it, that will come up on the title work, and they'll have to be according, and I confirmed with my contacts at the title company that that will have to be resolved in some way or fashion before they would be allowed to sell that land. So that's where we are. If anybody has, as you read through the complaint and the exhibits, if you have any questions, you can, please let me know. It's obviously been a long effort. We were trying to put as much as we could in there, and now we can just see where things will go. But at least it will stop them from selling land without dealing with us.
Okay, thank you for the update. Anybody have any questions for Attorney Gaziano? Okay, next item on there is Crossroad Church, water main and other infrastructure issues. Chad, if you can update us, I believe that water main has been installed.
Water main's complete. It's passed the pressure test and the bacteriological test. So the only remaining item is the completion of the operating permit, which will be pending the EPA. They basically had a special provision in the construction permit that said that once it's completed and once it's passed the regular criteria, which is the pressure test and the bacteriological test, it's to be put out of service. So we'll be applying. I will share with the committee that we do intend to ask them to waive that and allow the pipeline to be put in service, and we would just utilize it as another flushing point. But they may reject that and require us to essentially drain that section of pipe, and it will sit there until the looping is completed. But the church has satisfied that obligation 100%.
Well, then what I would propose is we will stop current tracking of this project and we'll move it down to the bottom of our list. So that way there, we know it's still there until the operating permit is signed, sealed, and delivered. But unless there's other information brought to the committee, this will be kind of archived. So we finally get maybe one thing almost off our list.
Yeah, just to elaborate, I know I kind of outlined the water main, the roadway, the public improvement of the roadway has been completed. They're paving, the patchwork where they had a previous utility cut is completed. So I would expect them to come forward in the near future with their request for reduction in letter of credit. So kind of a highlighter there for maybe Mary to just maybe dust off the file on that, because I would expect them to come relatively soon, because they're over 90% completed now with the public infrastructure requirements.
Well, then I will correct my previous statement. I will leave it kind of on the active until that letter of credit issue is resolved. Okay, retention issues, as you recall at our previous, well, maybe one meeting back, I kind of shared some pictures and everything else with the committee and just, some of the issues that we got to put some definition on. I had intended to have, some things updated with some starting drafts to work from on that. I don't have that done yet, so that's still an open item. Public Works Committee has got 2 or 3 open projects that they are currently have scheduled once the weather will cooperate as far as fixing some culverts and some other things on there. But as we've talked about previously, so we can kind of keep ourselves out of the gray area, is try to define some of those things more clearly that, and again, the whole issue comes around what the term of maintenance is, to what is maintenance, and maybe what is a capital repair or whatever. So that way there, we're not constantly having to reinvent the wheel every time an issue comes up, whether it's a resident responsibility or a village responsibility. But weather permitting, hopefully the team can get a couple of these projects, off the existing list. But again, we thought we were supposed to have better weather today, and we got a little bit of rain. Fortunately, it didn't add up to a whole lot, but it doesn't take much to defer things when the ground is already saturated and you're trying to get in equipment to wet areas. And unfortunately, the the weather is very conducive to grass growing at a very rapid rate. When you've got limited resources on there, we're kind of trying to balance the priorities of what to work on. But that will still be an open item that we'll continue to work on.
And Attorney Gaziano speaking. Trustee McKinnon, were you going to get us copies of the pictures that you had taken? Because as I
Yes,
recall,
I
there were
intended to
some
do
that
that.
could not see.
Nope, I did not send that. I will put that on my list of things to do to circulate that.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, if I don't put things on a to-do list, they don't get done.
Ditto.
And again, another area that is just didn't know exactly where we were going. Chad, you and I had a conversation the other day relative to, I know we're trying to get some definition on requirements of whether or not future permits are required for sidewalks and driveways, but you and I had a conversation about this the other day, and I don't remember exactly what we talked about.
In its inception, the American flag has been an
Historically, we've researched this a couple times, and we've gathered examples from other communities. And it's one of the things that I was hoping that we would just work through this year, especially with 2020 being what it is, to work through and have it as budgetary items in 2021 and placeholders. But the main point of the conversation is we do have a lot of interest or a heightened interest in sidewalk replacement. And to make sure that it gets done right, we have previously discussed the permit process. Likewise, once upon a time, the village had a sidewalk program. Our current ordinance in place doesn't really reference a sidewalk program. And we were very close at committee at one point in time to passing a sidewalk program with descriptions. Kelly's been looking through the hard files, and I'm digging back. It's probably been 5 to 6 years ago. I did not get those documents out or ready for this committee, the whole meeting, but just want to share that it's going to be forthcoming.
I will also dig through my open files. I do recall the conversation we had on that, and possibly if you guys aren't able to get your hands on it, maybe I've got my copy of the working documents, which I'll pull out and share. And I guess part of that was, obviously when we were talking about permitting, it was more or less to make sure things were done correctly rather than a revenue source. However, if we could pick up a small amount of revenue in there, that might help fund the sidewalk program. So I'll look through my files or whatever, and that way there we'll try to get that. So when the opportunity presents itself, we can kind of raise this thing on the priority level as some of these other things are being cleaned up a little bit. And last but not least, Chad, any updates, or are we still kind of in a status quo on
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't get the audio.
No, any update to the hailstorm issue? Any hailstorm updates?
I believe since the last meeting has been when we had the adjuster came out. He did come out unannounced at the end of the day, and he did not need accompaniment because he had already covered many of the properties. I will be reaching out to our liaison at IML this week because we have not heard on the properties what the adjustment would be. I do know the Village Hall has a new leaky roof as a result. And I do know I had shared at one point, based on our insurance documents, that there's very good odds that the police garage may get totaled because it's insured quite low. The police garage is only insured at $40,000. And I did have contractors here to look at the properties before the adjuster showed up, and the estimations due to that flat roof and the metal work that goes along with that roof, it could quite easily surpass that value. But again, I really don't want to talk without the rest of the data that we're awaiting. And I will be working with Kelly in the office as well and trying to see why we're not getting a little better service from IML on these issues. Secondly, the vehicles, the one vehicle has to go back in for reevaluation, and the other vehicle is just a matter of getting scheduled in that we just haven't had the luxury of doing yet. But both trucks will be getting improvement and repair at the level as per the insurance adjustment. Well, those things are in the works, but again, I have not gotten the adjustment, and to my knowledge, neither has Kelly. We were circulated on both of those, and we've been sharing the emails. So it is something we'll be lighting up this week. The stance on that, however, is they did tell us it would be 3 to 4 weeks. Please note we're in the neighborhood of 7 buildings with substantial damage. All 3 well houses, the village hall, storage building at village hall, police garage, and then the maintenance shed, as well as cold storage buildings at the public works grounds. That's the best update I can give you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anybody within the committee or outside the committee on any of the items discussed? If not, that concludes the public works portion of the meeting.
All right, and I see that Lori Morgan has not logged into the meeting yet.
Negative, Mike.
So if she's not in, we can either go to police committee since we have all 3 members of police committee available and do that now, or we could go into community development. I'll leave that up to Mike and Don. Do you want to proceed with the community development now or wait for Lori to try and join later?
Why don't we Lori join?
Wait for her to join? Okay. So then is police committee ready to go forward?
Yes.
All right, Stan, I'll let you take that part of the meeting then.
All right. We've already approved the minutes, unless you want me to do it again.
I think we're fine.
Okay. Chief White has been working on a program with this bulletproof vest. We have a couple of vests that are going to be outdated here soon. So, Chief White, you want to take care of that?
Yeah, the bulletproof vest program pays for 50% of a vest for an officer. We're allowed to submit for reimbursement at that 50% rate for officers that have left for replacement or vests that are going to expire within a 2-year time frame. I submitted for 3 because obviously Todd Stockberger had left. Randy Smith, I think he's getting close within the 2 years to expire. And I put 1 in there for an officer to be named in the future. The 50% payout would be like $1,375 that the program would pay if it's granted to us. So, and then the village would be responsible for the other $1,375 to cover the vest that we're currently using.
Is that $1,375?
I believe so, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. It would be $1,178.
Is that per vest or for the 3?
For the 3.
Okay.
And that program
All right,
closed June 1st, I believe, and they'll be reviewing the applications now and then let us know if it was granted to us or not.
All right, thank you. As you all well know about Officer Smith with his heart attack and everything, Chief White had spoken with him today. You want to give us an update on that and his condition and everything?
Yeah, I spoke to Randy earlier this morning, asking him about his timesheet, trying to make sure I had all his hours correct, and then put his sick time and everything else in there. He sounds very good. He says he feels very good. I got an update from Mike Munn just not too long ago that it sounds like he may be coming home on Wednesday morning. Obviously, he probably will not be returning to work right away, but he'll be at home. He'll still have to do physical therapy for his cardiac therapy and a couple other things. And he's already doing that. He's out at Van Mater right now on Mulford Road. But his CAT scan as well, they don't show any signs of any brain damage or anything like that from the lack of oxygen. He said he'd have a short period of time where his memory wasn't very good, but he said it's coming back to him. He's remembering things. So we're just wishing him the best and keeping in contact with him.
All right, well, that's going to move us on to number 3, the staffing issue that we are running into. And I know it's a financial deal for having all of our officers go and fill in the different shifts that he is not able to do himself. And Jeff, you want to give some status on this with part-time possibilities?
Sure. The thought process was the best option we have right now to cover as many shifts as we can is to move Officer Half to the B side of the shift, which is opposite what he works right now. And then we would have 4 people available to cover shifts. If we leave it the way it is, we have 3 people to cover shifts. That's including the part-timers. I guess the biggest question for me is how do you want to handle this? I've already spoken to Chief Barcelona from the Sheriff's Department after Randy had his incident. And again, spoke with him about shift coverage from the Sheriff's Department if we needed it. He said they would do everything they needed to do to take care of things. He would just want advance notice. Now my question is the matter of, do you want to pay officers as much as we can to work the overtime hours, or do we use the shifts that are open and have the Sheriff's Department cover those shifts? I don't know how long this will last. I don't know how long Randy's out, but I've got a long list of dates and times. That's going to include vacation times for other officers as well. So it's going to get quite tight as far as people-wise. If we try and cover all of it ourselves, the guys are very up for it. They are willing to cover any shifts that we can, and they are willing to. But if you look at the budget numbers and the revenues and stuff, I don't see all those completely, but just wanted some input as to what other people's thoughts were. You know, they want us to cover as much as we can and use the Sheriff's Department sparingly, or have the Sheriff's Department cover all the shifts that we have that are open. We're not going to have people for.
Jeff, it's Julie. What are the financial implications of using the Sheriff's Department? I'm assuming we pay them then, correct?
As far as I know, we don't pay anything. By statute, they have to. By statute, they have to cover shifts that we don't have coverage for.
And Jeff, Attorney Gaziano, I'm sorry. I just thought maybe he could explain what the level of coverage is from the county when they do, so everyone's aware what that means.
More than likely, the coverage you're going to get is if there's a call out here, they'll come out here. Other than that, I highly doubt you'll see a patrol car unless they happen to be in area for something else and passing through. You probably, not guaranteed, but you probably won't see much of a patrol presence. That's kind of the way I've seen it in the past when we used the Sheriff's Department. I know the village has passed an ordinance to provide 24/7 coverage. I just, I know there's going to be a financial hit if we start working everybody overtime. So I wanted to bring it to the board first, or to the police committee, and then the board, to find out what avenue we want to go. We do have background checks going on for a part-time officer right now. So hopefully I can get that person in here as long as everything checks out within the next couple of weeks. Get that person started, and then I want to look at the full-time position and fill that position as well. and that's going to bring us back to our normal staffing level. And obviously, the person that, if we find a person that's qualified, they would have to be certified already in the state of Illinois. And if they've been on a few years, have some experience, it shouldn't take too long to get them up to speed. But I want to make sure you still want to go forward with something like that as well, as to start the process of hiring a full-time person. I mean, because there are costs involved with that as well, as far as uniforms and adding people to our training rosters. So it may not be a lot, but I know it's on everybody's mind for the budget numbers and keeping the numbers as low as possible, because we don't know what the outcome of the COVID-19 pandemic situation is going to be and how long it's going to last.
Hey, Jeff, this is Mike McKinnon. Having never participated on the police committee, I'm probably, at a distance of, seeing some of how the nuts and bolts and everything work. But I guess, do we have, like a schedule that shows what coverage you have? And, and is there an opportunity? Because I believe, from what I understand, that we always try to have 2 officers on duty. Is there the opportunity that, when maybe we've only have 1 officer available, then the county can pick up the backup of that officer? I guess I just don't know how the pieces all kind of move together to provide the coverage we're looking for.
Right. The way we're staffed right now, Mike, Mr. McKinnon, is we have, well, when Randy was still here, we had 1 person for each shift. Other than the day shifts through the week when I was here, then there was 2 of us here. But all the other shifts, both night shifts and both day shifts, when Randy was still here, had 1 person, plus me on the days. The weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, are only 1 person. And now with Randy gone, we're missing 1 person for a day shift on every other weekend.
Okay, so the gap you're trying to fill is 0 coverage gap.
Well, as much as I can, yes.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know what level we had 2 and what level we had 1. So you're trying to cover gaps that presently we have 0 coverage for.
We have 0 extra. We have some spots where there's 0. One of the last committee meetings we had was brought up about officers not taking vacation because of the COVID. Those officers are now reaching the top of the scale for the amount of hours they can accrue, and they're wanting time off as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where I have days where both sides of the shift, the day and night shift, are empty. If we move officer half to the other side of the day shift, one of our part-timers, Edgar Altamirano, is more available on the opposite side where Nick would be to come in and work. And then we have Mike Munn currently that can still work mostly just Saturday and Sunday because he's working at the EOC. But I wanted some input.
Attorney Gaziano speaking. As to Mike Munn, Jeff, as far as Mike Munn is concerned, I know you mentioned about him on the weekends based on his other schedule. I haven't seen anything that would give him any release for full work duties. Do you have something that I don't?
No, I do not, but he's only going to be working a few hours here for us.
Okay, but would those hours be in full patrol?
Yes.
Because that's not the extent as I recall from his work release. So that would have to get addressed.
He was released for 20 to 30 hours of work.
Right, but in there it did not indicate what type of work, and because he was going to be at the center, it wasn't a big deal. If he's going to be doing something other than that, I just need to know, so that we would need to follow up to get that further clarity from them, what they really do. Even though it had been asked.
Yeah, I'll check with them.
Thank you.
See if we can get something else.
Jeff, do you have anyone else in the pipeline for part-time? I know you're in a perpetual search for part-time officers, but is there anything there at all?
Yeah, we do have 1 person that we've already got an application from, and Nick Half has started a background on him as well. and that's a person that's already certified. He's a firefighter full-time, so he would have a good amount of availability. It's just a matter of checking his background, make sure everything comes out right, and then bringing him into the position if everything works out. And as far as the full-time position, I have a couple people that are interested. They are both certified, and they might be viable options. It's just a matter of doing backgrounds on them as well and make sure everything comes out in their favor.
Now, when you're talking about this other full-time position, is this kind of your position, or what about the sergeant position then?
Well, the sergeant I want to bring in from somebody that's already inside the agency, move them up into the sergeant's position, and then actually the position that would be filled would be Nick Hass, or be the extra position that we have now. So we would have one night shift on each side of the shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we would have the cover officer, which is normally, we ran anywhere from noon to midnight or 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. And that shift is offset by a day. So we get more of the weekend coverage out of that officer. It's just a matter of the money in the budget. If you want to go back to that level of service, that level of staffing that we had once before.
Dan, do you have an opinion?
I'm sorry?
I just wondered if you had an opinion on this.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is with talking with Jeff, is I'd like to see I know he's been working on the sergeant's position, and I'd like to see the cover shift come back, which would mean the hiring of another officer, and the possibility of these part-time officers filling in some of the times for Randy. I believe that it would be better to have our own guys take care of our village rather than have nobody coming out unless there is a certain call. That way we're still up with the 24/7 coverage. And if we can get these part-time officers involved on everything, then, and push that forward, I believe we'd be in better hands.
Yeah, I agree.
Hopefully it wasn't misunderstood. We would still be short Randy Smith's position. We would have to cover, right. And that was with everybody back to normal. If Randy were to come back to work, then we would have that extra person for the cover shift as we had before Chief Stockburger left. If Randy is out any length of time, the positions would be basically 4 people on the shifts for the rotations on both sides, days and nights. And the sergeant would fill one of those positions as well. So we would still be one person short if it were to come about that Randy had not returned to work or cannot return to work.
Right, and that's a status that we're going to have to keep an eye on as far as what he is able to do and what he is wanting to do. He is, he's real close to the time where he might just say, forget it, I'm done, or, I hope he comes back, but that's something that we have to keep an eye on as far as going forward with his schedule.
And I don't know what the probability is that he would, if it's possible that a cardiac doctor will not release him to come back to work to do police work. I don't know. That's going to be in time. We'll find out.
But it's a matter of getting your old position filled,
right,
and going forward with the new hire.
Yep.
This is Don. How do you expect to cover the vacations that you have now for yourself and the 3 officers that are on duty now?
Well, I've already had the guys volunteer, so they will cover whatever shifts they have to make sure that we have coverage as much as possible. I can't guarantee everything will be covered. I will cover shifts if I have to. And then there may be some times where we have to put it off to the county because everybody's been working a lot. I'm sure it's going to come to that point. Unless Randy miraculously comes back within the next month or so. We don't have any long vacations scheduled. They're like 3 and 4 days in a row. So I think if we worked it correctly and properly with our part-timers and full-timers filling in here and there, we should be able to cover it without too much of a problem.
Could you have something drawn up for the regular board meeting in a week or so?
I sure can. I've actually got a list of all the dates that are going to need coverage out through, I believe, the end of August. So it's a matter of coming here and finding out which direction you want to go. I will put those dates out to everyone to see what they're willing to cover as far as vacation times and open shifts. And then hopefully by the next board meeting, I should be able to have, at least an idea as to what shifts or how many would be open that we would have somebody available for.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jeff, it's Julie again. Yeah, I think one of the basic services, obviously, we have to perform as a village is to have police protection. So I think we have to, my opinion would be, I would like us to try to get our own people to cover these shifts as they can. So with that in mind, you said that we had 1 person coverage. Does that mean all of Randy's hours, basically the 40 and 48 hours, all have to be replaced? And some with our full-time people going overtime and some with our part-time people?
Yes. So but the idea is to cover as much as we can with the part-time people. That was the idea of moving Nick Half to the other side of the day shift schedule. Right. We have more people a larger pool to work with. If we bring in another part-time, that's another person. If we push forward with another filling the full-time position that basically Chief Stockburger left, we could move forward and have not much of an issue.
Yeah, maybe you and I can even talk a little bit later and just kind of get an idea how many overtime hours, how many non-overtime hours, just so we can crunch some numbers. But at the end of the day, I think we need the coverage, and I'm also worried about burnout because I know we're not taking vacations and now we're working overtime. So we need to keep going with the hiring process, and that's my opinion anyway, and get the sergeant filled. And that would be my opinion. I'm one person, but I'm worried about you guys.
Well, I don't know if anybody heard, we did have a little issue on Saturday that was ended up being nothing. There was a potential protest and ended up only being 1 person here in town. So I brought everybody in for that. It was a limited amount of time, but not knowing what was going to happen, we did that as well. But yeah, I will sit down with a schedule with the hours and days that are going to be currently open. Get people to commit to days, weeks, hours, whatever, and then we should be able to put some numbers together. I would like to hit on the numbers for a starting pay for a part-timer as well and starting pay for a full-time position, so I know exactly what that is.
Okay. We have a starting pay for the part-timer, do we not?
I think so. It was 18 or 18.50.
I thought it was 18, unless I'm wrong.
That could be. Excuse me. And I don't have COVID, thank you.
I was just going to ask.
So we can check on those numbers.
Yep.
As far as pay, and have that ready for board meeting then.
Yep, and then I'll have these shifts lay out as to what the plan is and what shifts to be covered, which would be open.
And Jeff, how long do you plan on laying that out for, like a month or more?
Planning out, probably at least through July, maybe even August, just to be on the safe side in case this drags out that long.
I think that's a good idea.
Hopefully, hopefully I can get another part-timer in here fairly quickly, get him trained up and get him on the street. And then once the background's done on the part-timer, start doing backgrounds on the full-time guys that are interested.
And I assume you've already talked to Nick about changing his shift, and he's okay with it?
Yeah, we have discussed that. He's not thrilled with it, but he'll do it.
Is there any more discussion on staffing then? Hearing none, move on to update on the vehicle seizures.
So I got an email that I think originally went to Todd's email at the beginning of the year. You have to submit vehicle seizure information to the state by the end of February. Well, I never got that email, so I wasn't aware of it. I got an email, it was probably mid-May, said, well, we need it by July 1st. So I had to go back through and figure out all the seizures that were pending, all the seizures that had been granted by the courts. Right now we have 3 that are pending. No, actually that'd be 4. It's 3 vehicles and 1 monetary seizure for a drug seizure. So we are up to date, and with the state, I had to submit all that paperwork to the state, so they were aware of what vehicles we had. There were a couple that weren't in the system that I had to add. And then they had 1 listed twice. They still had 1 listed that had already been adjudicated through the courts. Got that removed, so that's not hanging over my head right now. So it's just a matter of, because of COVID, obviously those court cases aren't going through. They've been postponing those cases forever, and hopefully they can start getting those cases back going and get that straightened out. I think there was right around, I think the estimated value of the vehicles are right around $4,500 to $5,000. And the other monetary seizure was like $240.
All right. Any more on that, Jeff?
Nope, that's it. That's just kind of an update. Let everybody know what's going on with those.
Okay. Seeing we wait. Any new business?
Nope. I don't have any.
I do. This is
Really?
Frank. I just wanted to give
go ahead.
We had our leadership conference at 1:30 today, and Mayor McNamara let us know that there will be a protest at 4 p.m. tomorrow at Beatty Park, which is down along the riverfront in downtown Rockford. They're protesting how the protesters were responded to by the police on Saturday. They're gearing up for the list of demands that have been sent out by this group of protesters, determining whether they will show up in person or just respond to it in writing. They don't know if it's going to escalate or if it's going to stay at the park or if they're going to move from the park to someplace else. But they have put everyone on notice that that's going to be occurring. As we know, last night Freeport had a bad situation with rioting, and they have a curfew that'll be in place in 3 hours at 8 p.m. tonight. They're expecting additional issues there. Then the mayor of Belvedere said that they're also taking measures in case any type of protests get out of hand. the Freeport situation, they did have to reach out, and Winnebago County Sheriff's Department did respond. They were very thankful for that. The state police were able to leave Rockford once it quieted down a little bit last night and went out to Freeport to assist. As Jeff pointed out, we did have that organizer yesterday, and I did let all of you, the trustees, know what we knew, and fortunately, it was just one person. I did let the mayors know that we had an incident and that we were able to offer a ride to the protester back, and Mayor McNamara wanted to know when he could move to Winnebago and run for trustee here, so he wouldn't have to deal with the issues in Rockford. I said anytime he wants to, he can come out to Winnebago. So anyway,
as long as he doesn't run for mayor.
Right. Well, I said he could take my spot if he wanted to. If he was really desperate, he could.
This is Don. The last sentence of your email, Frank, was outstanding.
Oh, right. Yep. About offering the ride back.
That's right.
Yeah. No, the good thing is we didn't have it escalate. We had a single person. It went smoothly. It did not escalate. But we do have to be prepared. Jeff was fully prepared. Jeff, I give you a ton of credit. You handled it extremely well. You had already contacted the sheriff on duty for the county. You contacted Carl Heinz, who is the captain of the state police in District 16. You even came into the village on your off day, and so I appreciate that. I think it shows, that even though it didn't lead to anything, it could have led to something, and you were on top of it. So, Jeff, I appreciate the effort that you put forth.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Sure. And so I just wanted to let you know that we don't know when or where. We don't know if the Beatty Park thing is a ruse and they're actually going to go somewhere else. They have had issues where people would start a little riot somewhere, police would respond in Rockford, they'd actually go to another place and start looting. So we do have to be aware that if things are going on in Rockford, they could spill over to neighboring communities. Loves Park did not have any bad incidents. Places in Loves Park and McChesney Park did close early last night because they were not sure how things would be affected there. So again, we need to be aware of what's going on, and hopefully it does not escalate anywhere, also in the village.
I did. Now, I don't know. I was on the conference call with the chiefs and sheriff's office today. There was some confusion whether the protest was supposed to be at Beatty Park or Beatty Playground.
Okay.
So I'm not sure which place it's be. Maybe they don't even know. And like you say, maybe it's a ruse. But they are aware of that time. There was also some scuttlebutt about a possible protest at 4 o'clock today at the courthouse. I don't know if that's transpired or not.
Mary, I don't know if you've seen anything out your window, but I haven't heard anything downtown. And usually you can get away from the courthouse.
Yeah, there's been nothing going on here.
I just Googled this while you guys were talking, and it says 5 p.m. tomorrow, Beatty Park, but it has the address 1251 Rural Street.
That's the playground.
All right. Yep. That's the playground.
The playground is on Rural Street. So.
Yep. So when they said Beatty Park, that's downtown.
Yep.
If they give the address of rural, obviously that's the playground. So.
Yep.
I guess we'll just have to stay tuned to see where it starts and maybe what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, obviously the two locations are across the river from one another, so unless they're going to start looting and rioting in a residential neighborhood over at Beatty Playground, unless they come across the river. I just want to throw out too, I just got a call while this council call is going on that Sullivan's grocery store will be closing at 7 o'clock tonight, just as a precaution. They requested that officers be present down there around that time, and I will let the night shift officer know that he was to make sure he's down there around the time they're going to close.
Sure.
I can also tell you
Jeff?
that in Rockford, there was an indication that they were threatening that the next place they were going to go was residential neighborhoods. So they were reporting that as well. So maybe that's what this has to do with this speedy
Yeah,
playground.
there was some has been some scuttlebutt, some things on social media, to advise people to go into residential neighborhoods and look for marked police cars parked in driveways, and also look for blue lights, your outdoor porch lights and stuff. And they're under the indication that anybody has a blue light is a police officer. So if you have a blue light out at your house, I would either turn it off or change it to a different color for now. I know I have 3 of them in the front of my house, and I have turned them all off. They have not been turned off since the death of the Rockford officer, but I have. If it was me in the house, I wouldn't care, but there's others in my house, so I'm taking that precaution as well.
All right, thank you. No need to go into executive session, so that completes the police committee
All right, thank you,
portion.
Stan. Lori still has not logged in. Would it be better to go to Finance Committee? Do you think Julie and Paul to go to Finance first?
I think we're going to be pretty light in finance, so we could do that.
Okay.
And so we've already approved the minutes in finance. Sally, is there anything new going on with Azabar?
Nothing new.
Okay, how about the 2019 audit?
It's been very slow. Jill asked me for something today, and the last time she asked me for something was about 2 weeks ago. I know her and Mark Olson are sort of finishing things up, but I don't know exactly where they are in the process. I talked to Mark today, and he was going to reach out to Jill and just see where she's at, but I have not heard yet.
Okay. Regarding the 2020 budget, I know you did send over the revenue numbers a little bit before the meeting, and I think you may have sent them to everybody. Yeah, and we look to still be in decent shape. We're not feeling the full impact. I know when I look through the revenue numbers, it looks like the income tax really isn't tracking with, maybe tracking with some of our lower years. But I was trying to remember, will this have an impact with the delay of tax filings and so forth too, or not?
That's going to be separate.
Got to be separate.
Right. So the income tax.
I'm sorry, Julie, I didn't catch the question completely. What was the question?
Paul, the question was, would there be a delay or an effect because of the lateness in filing or the delay in filing our income taxes? I think that's what she asked.
Well, I'm not sure where Paul is, but if you, Frank, you're now thinking that's not going to affect us at all?
Well, it'll be delayed, obviously, if people have not filed income tax returns.
Right.
I think that the monthly collections, though, are from payroll, right? I don't know exactly how that works.
Mike, you don't have your microphone on.
Paul? Okay, well, what I'm going to say is generally I agree with Sally. Things look pretty good so far. We're not feeling the full impact. when I look at the other years on the income tax, we are running kind of behind the other years, but still, we're not that far off. So I think we're in pretty good shape. And Sally, I haven't seen any update on the expense
I would
side.
agree with
Have
that,
you
Julie.
seen anything there?
I would
Could you
agree with
repeat
that,
that?
Julie. I looked over the, we're not in bad shape really at all.
So what we gathered is that Paul agrees that we're not in bad shape. He agrees with what Julie and Sally had mentioned.
Yeah. And Sally, I have not seen anything on the expense side, so I don't know if you have any comments on anything that you've seen maybe month to date there.
I did a quick report before the meeting, and I don't like to do that prior to the board meeting because, well, it's more accurate once we've paid our monthly bills. But nothing looked out of place. There were some line items that we identified in our last meeting. One of them was 0141453, which is the it's IDES, the Department of Employment Security, that we pay for payroll. And I determined that the reason why that line item is so high, it's at 108%, is because we also in that line item is $81 from the last quarter, which would have been a 2019 expense. And I looked into it, and unfortunately that won't be pulled out for the from the audit. It is something that was missed. So we'll just have to watch it, monitor it, and maybe do a line item transfer if needed.
Okay, and those are not big numbers there.
No, it should be fine.
Yeah. So one thing you'll want to look at, though, Sally, for next week is just let's look at the police salary lines as we're talking about this overtime and everything, and let's just get a good handle on where we are now through the end of May.
Okay.
We've got anything else in the budget anybody wanted to talk about? Paul, Sally? Okay. I looked through the credit card reports. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me there. I'm comfortable with that. Anything you wanted to highlight there, Sally?
No, my only comment is that I did not receive the April statement. And so we did end up having to pay a fee, which I really hate. But since then, I've gotten an online presence for that particular billing, so I can go on there and make sure that even if I don't get a bill, that I can pay it on time. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's good. I like to, I mean, we're all going online, so we might as well do it that way.
Yeah.
All right. Policy project, we have nothing there. Budget impact, we kind of talked about that. I think item number 3 and item number 6 were intended to be kind of the same thing there. So we can do that, change that future agenda. So that's one item. Delinquent and aging accounts, is that you or is that Kelly?
Kelly is the one that created the report. So if Kelly feels comfortable answering questions, that would be the preferred thing, Kelly.
Hello.
I haven't had a chance to look over in detail, so I'm kind of looking as we're talking here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will point out that one of the biggest piece of that is one of the accounts that we ended up placing a lien on. And the property potentially is in line to be sold this month. And so thankfully we have the lien in place that we should be able to recover that shortly. I heard from the realtor that potentially the end of June is a possible closing. So there are some that are difficult to collect, and I will be sending out some letters for those. The one account on here under G&G Construction, we did collect that today, so that was like $678 that was collected today. It's slightly less than last month's analysis. That I finally received this worksheet from Sally, I think a month ago, that was used by the auditors in the past. So that was really helpful in keeping the data compiled. And so I created a spreadsheet to move forward month by month and then just monitor whether it's increasing or decreasing. There was a slight decrease over last month's, less than $200, but still.
I think this will really help to monitor delinquent accounts. I mean, if finance is looking at it every month, we should be able to take action sooner.
Right. More hours are we having a lot of late payments with the COVID?
Maybe just a couple, maybe it's just a small number of them. There's several of them that are frequent late payers that month to month, they are the ones that we have to call. They'll pay what they have to pay, but then the next month it kind of moves into the balance of over 120 days again. So there are some that were prior to 2019, the end of 2019, going back all the way to even 2015. I think we need to look and see what we're going to do to get them off of this report.
Yeah.
We have a 5-year, they have to be on here for 5 years before we write them off. And then we still are able to collect if we need to. So that one at the top can definitely be a write-off.
That's the one from March of 2015. Yeah, I was wondering if we could do that. There's some that are smaller amounts that I don't like 54 cents and 64 cents. Do they have to remain on for another 5 years?
No.
Okay.
No, we can write those off too. Maybe we can have a meeting this week to look at those.
Okay.
Is this 5-year rule, Sally, for my education? Is that just our internal policy, or?
Yes. It was a suggestion from our audit firm to do it that way.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly, for taking this on. That will be helpful for us to look at this every month and maybe get a little bit more organized with our approach on this, and who knows, maybe even look at our policy and see if something else might make sense. So thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Here's the agenda here. Do we have any new business for finance?
I do have an item. Two things. One is just wanted to let you know, if you didn't see it already, that the IML conference in September has been canceled. So if we did have anything budgeted for that, we can release that. I don't think we did, and I see Sally shaking her head no.
We didn't.
Right. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up is Brad Cole's email of May 4th of 2020 does have in there how he is kind of forecasting how the COVID-19 will affect municipal revenues. And he said he's looked at other states and how it'll affect the municipal fiscal year of 2021. And again, I don't know if municipal fiscal year is May 1st to April 30th, but that's typically, you know, what most municipalities are running. You know, he's showing things of a decrease of 30% of personal property replacement tax from the 2020 amounts. He's showing that the LGDF may experience a decrease of 15% from the actual 2020 amounts. Motor fuel tax will decrease about 15% from the 2020 amounts. And he said the use tax will remain flat. So he addressed those. So if you want to go to that specific email, you can look at those. But again, that would be looking at the 2020 has now ended as of April 30th, and we would now technically be in the 2021 fiscal year, I'm guessing from May 1st of this year through April 30th of 2021. So just to kind of give you an idea of, you know, we should be looking at reducing ours about that percentage just to be on the safe side. But that's all I have.
Did you send us that email?
Do all of you trustees get Brad Cole's emails? He's been sending them pretty much every day. Do you get his emails?
Yes.
I do.
Okay,
I
Sally
don't know
Bennett.
that I get a daily one, but I do get one probably once a week or a month or something.
Okay, Sally, do you get them?
I do. So I must have missed that. Sorry.
I have here May 4th, 2020. Oh, well, it's sent out to the mayors, village presidents, town presidents, managers, administrators, treasurers, finance officers, and comptrollers. So this could be one that maybe you didn't get. I'll try and remember to, I'll make a note to forward this out to everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, sorry, that must be back to me. Or was that all you had, Frank?
Yep, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right, and we don't need an executive session, so I believe that wraps us up.
Okay, did you want to schedule another meeting since we're not going to have a cow meeting next time? Did you want to schedule your finance committee meeting now or wait till next week?
Well, I don't have Lori on yet, do I?
No, she's not on yet, so maybe we'll wait till
So
the
we'll
next.
probably, yeah, maybe if she's going to be in the board meeting, we can figure out dates then.
Okay.
Okay,
That
we
would be
got
fine.
14 on community development. So Julie, don't leave so fast.
Well, that's it for finance. We do have community development coming up. I've not heard from Lori yet. So if you want to, we can go on to community development. Just start there, and if she comes in,
We'll just jump around because we have to go into executive session because of item number 5. Correct?
Right. I don't know if 3 would also be one.
She could.
Yes, I would like to have a discussion on compensation for the inspectors in item 3 during the executive.
Okay.
Okay, fine. There'll be two during the executive. Let's start it out. We're going to move right along. I talked to Casper Manheim this morning, and he told me that he has picked up a few signs that were in the right of way, but he has also written about 6 letters, and most of them was for grass, and most of them, he told me, that were for commercial properties. Okay, number 2, the solar electrical system code enforcement ordinance and inspection requirements. Where are we at that?
I have this Attorney Gaziano, I have a beginning draft on that I should be able to get out to you. I don't know that I can say before the board meeting, but a draft will at least be out. It probably won't be ready for voting on by then though.
Okay. Because I understand that we've had three or four people at least show interest in putting in some solar heating system. Number three, well, anything else on solar?
No, it's just that's in process. It's good to know that there's apparently interest, so that can get it moved along.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Okay, number three, we're going to do that in the executive session. Number four, revoking that, cannot do that until we get a clarification on item number three. Number five, the appraisals of the real estate properties, that will be taken care of in the executive session. Permit fees, that will also be addressed in the session.
I don't know that I don't know, Don, I don't know that number 6 will be addressed in executive session, but number 6 is contingent upon the output of item number 3.
That's it. That's right. Okay. All right. Garbage contract. Frank, how are we doing?
Well, I think this was referred to committee to talk about whether you wanted to have it put out to bid or if you wanted to negotiate with them. So I think we need to know, at least that's my recollection, is that we were wanting to know which way the board wanted to go, and I thought it went to committee to discuss this.
Okay,
that is correct, and the last time it went out to bid, I think, was 1999.
Yes. Okay, from the committee, your input, Mike.
Well, if they've been doing a good service for us, I would probably prefer the route of having a discussion with them and try to get something negotiated without having to go out for bid. Probably, if any of us happen to have friends, neighbors, or acquaintances in other areas, to try to get some idea from what people are paying. Just from a few conversations I've had with others, and they're not in our immediate area, we do have some pretty respectable garbage rates.
Yes. I've talked to a couple of fellows. One is in Davis. I've talked to another one in Dakota about what they're doing for their garbage rates, and ours are all within the ballpark. So I guess what do we need? Do we need a motion to just go ahead and work a deal with our current garbage contractor?
That would be recommended, that the committee make a recommendation or vote to negotiate and bring that to the board, that we negotiate with our current service provider rather than going out to bid.
Okay, fine. Mike, I need a
I would make a motion that we initiate negotiations with the current supplier for a renewal of our existing rate. And if we're able to get a favorable outcome, then we commence. If we're not able to, then we may have no choice but to go out for bid.
Okay, I'll second the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so that's your permit on that.
Hey, quick question. Can I ask a question even though I'm not a committee member?
Yes, you may.
So, Mary, you said it's been 21 years since we've taken this out to bid?
Yes, it's been, I looked back and from the last time, and that's what my recollection tells me. It's been several years. We normally do these as 5-year contracts, as I recall, with them. And I kept going back, and we just had several 5-year contracts.
And
I mean,
Julie,
I don't have oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Julie, this one that's coming up, we had negotiated with them. The one before that was just before Paul and I came on the board. And we were able to negotiate, I thought, a very good rate this last time, 5 years ago. And, we had not had complaints of service, and we ended up, I think, getting more than what we had before. But you're right to question that, because there are times when you always want to compare, and sometimes you do go out to bid, but you also may not get, there's good reasons to go out to bid and not so good reasons to go out to bid. So it's just a matter of what you want to do. And again, we can talk about this at next week's meeting. But
I was on that negotiating committee, but I had to be excused from that because at that particular time, Michael Anderson, who is my classmate in high school, I've known him since grade school, was the president and CEO of Gill's Disposal Service. He has since sold the business, but yeah, they would treat us real nice. I didn't have any problem. Nope.
And that's the other thing, Don, that we would probably need to do is see if we want to have a negotiating committee, and whoever that's going to be part of, we would probably want some people on that to sit down with Gills and discuss our terms. So
I would be glad to be part of that. I'm sure you would be too. How about you, Mike?
Well, if we do have,
I love to talk trash.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How do you get along with your garbologist? Okay.
Yeah. So we can talk about that the next time around.
Okay. Vote on a guide for businesses, places of worship, sports, and recreation. I've read that entire thing. Everybody else read it? Very interesting.
Just to give an update, we are getting things from the DCEO. We get things from the county health department. We get things from IML, and all of those sources do provide the latest guidance. And how we're supposed to look at this is the state will put out certain factors or certain guidance principles. The county of Winnebago can actually be stricter than that. And so what happens is the county or the city of Rockford will have people on committees and look at things, and they may come up with a set of guidance principles. And if the state comes out with a set, then they try and look at them both and try and see, okay, how can we change the local ones to mirror what the state's doing? But we may see some things with the county health department that are a little different than the state, but we are inclined to follow the state. But if the county has something, we want to then follow the county to be in unison with what the county is putting out. So just so you know, if there's any conflict, we're going to go with our local county rather than with the state.
Because yeah, he put out another, you might say, extension on it to June 27th. I thought that was very interesting. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. Now, number 9, possible temporary changes to village ordinance to allow businesses, places of worship, and activities to serve more people. I think if we go by the city that's just been done, I think we're up to what, 10 people now, Frank?
Right. We're allowed up to 10 people to gather at a place. You can have up to 6 people at a restaurant table, but it must be outdoors. But places of worship can have up to 10 people, but there are guidelines that have been put out by the state and then also by the county health department. So any places of worship in the village should be following the county guidelines that are set out.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any input on that one? If not, we'll go to for restaurants and bars.
Wait a minute, Don. I apologize. I haven't had a chance to read all those in detail, but there's so many different things on the news on so many different states and relative to the places of worship, but they are still held at 10.
Yes.
I thought some of those were based on fire code, maybe a percentage of fire code or something. as opposed to a finite number.
Well,
Right.
they put it to 10, but you could have it in different rooms. You could have it in the church, but you could have it in different rooms as long as you were 6 feet apart, unless you were a family, and then you could be in a group. But the group could not be over 10. It's been, in other words, if your church had 5 different rooms, you could have 5 different services, or one service, but piped to the 5 different rooms. And there's several ways that people have been trying to work around it. And I really feel sad because in reading it, I read the state one and I've read the one from IML, and it's very confusing. At one time, they were going to change it up to 25 to 50 people. But as far as I know, as of today, it's still a 10. Your input, Frank?
Correct. The group size, they say, should be limited to no more than 10 people in one remote location. So as Don, you were saying, you can have more than one remote location and up to 10 people in each location. They should be 6 feet apart. They're discouraging any type of group singing. They say that you should provide 26 feet of space around anyone singing. I don't know if that's a typo or if that's what they're actually
No,
saying.
that's true, because they figure either spit or saliva can project over 26 feet. I think that's a little bit strong as far as my background is concerned, but I'm not gonna argue with anybody. They think
I guess the principle of it is this is like other things. We can be more restrictive, but we can't be less restrictive.
Correct.
That's true. That's very true.
You know,
And
if you get a large enough building that that 10 is ridiculous. If you got a large enough building, you could have 2 people sitting in 4 corners that are 100 feet apart from each other, and that makes 8.
Right.
That's right.
But I thought there, like I said, there's legislation in various states, and I know they put a stay on it, and I thought the places of worship was one that there was some structural changes to it.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing, and especially about communion and so forth like that. They've had several people that have tried to give communion. The priest has been outside, and they don't even want you to drive by in your car because you can't use the same chalice. You can't use the same. It has to be in an individual packet and everything. I've read the whole thing. And I tell you what,
I cannot intelligently discuss it until I read it, so I guess I'll reserve any further comment.
Well, and Mike, to your point, it talks about physical gathering worship service considerations. It says indoor seating capacity should not exceed 1 person for every 113 square feet per individual. Each household member sitting as a group will add 25 square feet to this requirement.
So therefore, that would seem to say that the 10 is not a finite limit.
Correct. It sounds to me that you possibly could have more, but when we had our discussion with Dr. Martell, Mayor Jury, I think it was St. Bridget's he was talking about, said that they're, who should he direct him to call because they're going to have some issues with this. And she said, well, I'm actually a member there and we've been talking to them and we have things in place. But she talked about 10 people in each remote location. Now, I don't know if that means remote location being separate rooms or if that means a separate building, but it sounded to me like it was a separate facility.
Yeah, because it seems ludicrous if you can put people in a restaurant in tables of 6 and make sure that you have 6 feet apart from each table. You've got a whole lot more people in a restaurant which is smaller than what might be existing in a larger church.
But Mike, you have to remember that's outdoors for a restaurant, and you're allowed to have an outdoor service.
Now, again, I'll reserve any further. I'll take the time to read it so I can be a little bit more knowledgeable about it, and otherwise I'm really not able to be.
But if you do have questions, my next conversation with Dr. Martell is Wednesday at 1:30, so I can bring up any questions you have regarding any of these things, worship, restaurant, retail, anything like that.
Yeah, it just seems to be a facade that they said they will open up a church to 10 people in a church for several hundred is not very productive.
Correct.
Right, okay, let's go to outdoor dining for restaurants and bars. I have a proposal here from the Winnebago Downtown Food Court. It says May 28, 2020. To whom it may concern, this request made by all downtown restaurant business to block off Main Street from Benton Street to the alley. The alley will be left open. Tables will be placed in street and on expanded sidewalk beside tent behind the scoop, thereby meeting our requirements according to the current rules. Social distancing will be observed with all the eating. This scenario is basically a car hop situation. Order your food and drink, and then it will be brought out to your table number, thereby limiting exposure in the building. Exceptions will be the scoop due to the nature of their business. Social distancing will be observed inside the building. We are requesting alcohol be allowed inside the food court grounds. No alcohol to leave the area. Wristbands will be used to identify those of age. There will be 3 liquor licenses covering their liability. We have spoken to the neighbors and they are accepting of this plan. We feel this is our best shot at securing during these times. The plan is substantially long-term with your cooperation. We are asking that you allow us to block 1/2 block to try to save our businesses. We're all made great investments in our downtown area and hope this will continue to stay here. Thank you for your advance. Winnebago Downtown Restaurants. All I don't know whether you received it or not, but I have a plan what they want to do. They want us to block off half of Main Street from Benton to the alley and be able to use that as the Bago food court. Now, this would hamper well, first of all, it would cut down half the street from Benton to all the way to the alley and half of Main Street. So that street would only be a half a width, 16 feet of the yard. So that's what we got. That's what we got on the agenda. Your thoughts?
All right.
Anyone?
Don, actually what they want to do is block off all of Main Street for that block. And the first thing,
this one said half of it.
my understanding is they want to block off the whole area west of Benton Street to the east opening of the alley. The people can travel north or south on Benton Street, can travel north and south in the alley, but nobody would be able to travel anywhere on Main Street between those two roads. So
Frank, before you proceed, we got a caller 7 that might be Lori.
Thank you for noticing, Mike.
This is Lori.
All right, thank you, Lori, for coming in. So the first thing that I want to point out is when Don was reading through this, it sounds like the scoop is asking or stating that they're going to need special permission, or they have to have people actually come into their facility, which is the only way you're allowed to go into a facility is to use a restroom. So that would have to be not allowed to let people go in there and place their orders. They do have to be outside. So I don't think that I don't think that we as a local government are allowed to supersede what the state and what the county are telling us in terms of who can go into a restaurant and why.
Well, I guess the only thing I would question on that is presently today and whether they're operating within their limit or they're maybe sketching. Is if today, if you place an online order, Seminos, you're still walking into the counter and picking that up and then leaving. So I guess how exactly is that set up? I know you're not allowed to eat in the facility, but is there a restriction of being able to walk in some portion of it, pick up your food and walk back out?
I don't think there's a restriction to pick up your food, but I don't think you're allowed to go in there and order your food.
Well, and again, that's why I say we got to kind of quantify exactly, fundamentally, we need to work with our businesses to try to figure out some option available, to be as flexible as we possibly can. I know that Chad Insco had replied back on that, at this point, we've got a lot of commercial businesses that are west of that location, and that's the only street we have in the village, which is rated heavy enough for the trucks going in and out. So that would be potentially a significant compromise. And it would seem if we were going to accommodate something, that trying to accommodate half of Benton Street would be a whole lot more viable than compromising a half of a heavily rated street.
Mm-hmm. Right. My initial thought when we first found out that there was going to be outdoor seating and we could be more liberal, my first thought was to block Benton Street totally, but then realized that we're going to have, some businesses that may be affected if you block the whole street. So could you block part of it? But then again, I didn't know if that'd be feasible. And then Mike Woolbright came up with the idea of blocking Main Street. So I thought I'd bring that, his request, but then see if there's other ideas. I also thought of allowing our parking lot that we just paved to be used for seating, but that may be too far away from the restaurants for them to conveniently get their servers and the food over there from the restaurants.
Yeah, I think from when I looked at the sketch and everything, what it appears to be is, again, you place your online orders, you call ahead, whatever it is you do, and as opposed to stopping in front of the post to pick up your food, you go down to wherever they have these tables set up at, and hey, I'm at table 3, and they come out and bring your food to table 3 as opposed to walking out the front door of the post. So fundamentally, I see where they're going, and I would like to try to support it, but we need a little bit more understanding before we could probably render any type of a decision on, first of all, exactly what does the scoop want to do, and are they within the guidelines that we can even endorse, and then how do we flow traffic and, so forth. It's going to take a little bit more than a 10-minute conversation trying to figure out these pieces.
And I think that the issue with the scoop is that what they've been allowing is people to go in and pick up what is now in a package. What I'm understanding from the scoop, they want to then just serve it and then have the person leave.
Right.
But still, they're serving it. It's not packaged, not made in advance and packaged, I guess you'd say.
Well, and again, I guess it's the same thing comes in there. Is like, okay, we work with you, but you still got to have maybe you can't go in and order it. You still got to have some type of order in advance or.
Yeah. And the next thing was mixed drinks and carry out. You can't do that. You can't. It has to be sealed, and it has to be in the container that came from the manufacturer. So you couldn't, if I wanted 7-7, Secret 7 and 7-Up, I couldn't get that because you can't drink it through a straw. There's a whole business.
Well, I mean, that was what our interpretation was previously, but is that what the guidelines are from the state? Because I've heard of places outside of Winnebago that are apparently doing just that. Whether they're legal or not, I can't answer.
The ICC actually had addressed that. There is legislation that's waiting to be signed by Governor Pritzker that will allow for cocktails or mixed alcohol to be sold and taken off premises. but they must be in a sealed type container. So you would
Right.
actually mix the drink, then have something to show that it's sealed, and then the person is not to consume it until that person arrives at his or her residence or private place to consume it.
Well, like I said, but
Right.
in their intended plan, if we were able to designate an area, nobody would be leaving in a vehicle with it. Is, again, it's loosely an extension of the restaurant or whatever. Is that something that's being accommodated with the special considerations? Not at the village level at this point in time, but just at the state level with some of their executive. I mean, it takes a full-time job to keep up with all that language that's going out.
The Illinois Liquor Control Commission has set out its updated FAQs as of May 29th, 2020. It talks about the outdoor dining and drinking, and what we need to do as a local municipality is to modify our current ordinances temporarily to allow certain things to occur. One is maybe to allow seating on sidewalks, because we may not currently allow seating on sidewalks, but we may want to consider that to allow seating on sidewalks to have people be able to eat outside or drink outside. The other item is we would need to modify our local ordinance regarding the consumption of alcohol. Currently, it must be on premises inside the building, or it can be outside if we have a certain type of fence. What we would want to do is, if we want to allow it, is to modify that to say that it can be in a designated area. It may not have to have a 6-foot fence, but maybe it has to have some type of snow fencing or some type of barrier like that, so we can monitor, where the people should be with their alcohol. And we can do that. I mean, we can designate that it can be on a public street. We can designate that it can be in a parking lot, but we'd have to make that modification. What the Liquor Control Commission is saying from the state is, if it's near or right next to, adjacent to the restaurant, then they don't have to get a special permit from the state. If it's going to be half a block down the street with a different address, they're likely going to need a special permit from the state. So we as a village might want to issue a special permit for that. So if we were going to have it in our parking lot, then we would want to have a permit allowing these restaurants to serve alcohol in that parking lot, because it's not adjacent to their business.
Well,
I guess
the biggest thing is there's a lot of loose ends, and we don't have 3 months to make a decision. We got like 3 days.
Right. And that's why, putting it on the agenda tonight, this thing evolved very quickly. We didn't really get everything in place until late last week from the state government and from the county. And so the idea is, they want, from the state on down to the county, they want us to be as liberal as possible to allow businesses to operate outside. And if they serve alcohol inside, they want them to be able to serve alcohol outside. We want to be able to have the dine-in atmosphere translate to the outside as much as we can. So from that,
the area that's behind the post is an area where they can serve liquor, but they have to. That's outside, of course, and they have to realize that they have to live by the 6-foot area. If this is a pickup and delivery, what's the difference whether they pick it up behind them, behind their business, but now they want to go out and expand.
Frank,
this is really not a pickup and delivery. It is a delivery to a designated area to eat on site.
Comment, Paul?
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Paul. Go ahead, Paul. They're also planning on putting up a 40 by 30 tent.
Comment?
Right, go ahead, Paul. We're having a hard time hearing you. It's like you're in slow motion. If you could go ahead, Paul.
Is he still there, Frank?
He is. He's talking. There we go.
Frank, do you think it would be possible for him to just call in from a phone?
That's what I was going to suggest. Paul, maybe if you could just dial in and call in and talk on your cell phone rather than trying to do it by video, that might work out. I don't know if you have the call-in instructions, but there should be a phone number you can call in, and then that will allow you to probably hear
I'm
us.
going to call the number on a text message here.
Okay.
Yeah, just make sure he closes out of his computer, correct? Otherwise we'll get feedback.
Paul, you'll need to close out of your computer and then also out of your phone, because I see you're in two places. And then if you can call us.
So do you want me to put this on the items for the, for
No, Don, let's hold on a minute for Paul to call back in, because I think we do the opportunity to take some more time to talk about these two items. As Mike said, I think it's extremely important that we address these, because our restaurants need to know tonight what the trustees are thinking. Otherwise, we won't have another meeting until next Monday, and they'll have lost 7 days of practice.
Benton Street. Allow the one-way traffic.
Okay, Kelly, Paul, can you start talking again, please?
Just said Paul Elson has left. Maybe he's trying to call again.
Sally or Kelly, can you delete the two Paul Elsons that are here, please? And then hopefully when he calls in.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Can I say something here, Frank? This is Stan.
Go right ahead, Stan.
While we're waiting for Paul.
Okay, caller 8 has arrived. And then it says, but Paul Elson has left.
Right, so Paul Elson is left, and that's good. We have caller number 8, which I believe is Paul.
Yeah, can you hear me, Frank?
Very well. Now Stan was going to say something, Paul, and then we'll let you talk.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Very well.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
All right, so Stan, go ahead with what you were going to say.
The only thing is that I only see one business that will be affected by shutting down Benton, and that would be Reflections. The other business, as far as the State Farm Insurance, the people can be on Main Street, and with the resale place, they'll be able to park down on the other end of the street. And that way you'd be able to accommodate the seating and the area for the post Kennedy's when they open up Semino's. And then, of course, we have the issue with the scoop as far as going in and getting your order or what have you. The only thing is to talk to Reflections to find out if they would have an issue with it, blocking off Main or Benton instead of, having a little section of one-way street on Main with only or even block the whole Main Street off from Benton to the alley. They're still not giving enough area. The post isn't going to be walking all the way down the block in order to be able to serve the food.
Right now, And Stan, I agree with that. That was my first thought is, the reflections would be the only one, but the post could also be affected because they would not have a place for their patrons to park if we do close off Benton Street. They do have an outdoor seating area. However, they may want to have Benton Street blocked off so they can put tables out in front of their place as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the people are getting hot food instead of warm food by the time they get down to the end of the street.
Right.
It would seem that we might only have to close off half of Benton Street. If we basically allow them seating area to the parking on the west side of the street, you could leave the parking available on the east side of the street and still allow one-way traffic through, possibly that would accommodate everybody.
Right. We just need to make sure we have enough room for vehicles to go by if there's a parked car and not possibly hit people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be, like I said, there's lots of pieces to figure out, but that would seem to be the more logical approach.
Right. I know the city of Rockford has allowed it last year, and Mary and anyone else that's been downtown, you probably have seen they have these big pallets that take up the space of a parking spot, and then the restaurants put a table or two in that big pallet, and I think it has a little wooden railing, so they actually sit in a parking spot downtown. And I know these places probably don't have the opportunity to do that, but that's what is done. And I suppose they could put tables in the parking spots and maybe use some type of fencing.
Yeah, because I think if the tables were just across the sidewalk in the parking, in close proximity of the restaurant, I think it stays a little bit closer to the intent of the overall guidelines and not something that's, 6 blocks down the street that's a little harder to manage for, are people taking alcohol out of the designated area? And then, also as Stan indicated, nobody wants their food 10 minutes later when somebody had to walk it all the way down there. But yeah, I mean, I am in support of trying to do everything we can to help these people, but we just got to recognize, some of the other limitations that are attached to it.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mike. This is Paul. Yeah, if you block off Benton Street on the west side down to the barber shop or down to the small brick bungalow down there, and then leave the Bonassi's dentistry open and the physical therapy open for a couple of parking spaces, you could block off half of Benton Street. There's parking at the trailhead. We just made a real nice parking up there on North Benton, just north of Main. You can park on the right side over by the park. You can park both sides of the street on Main across from the village office. So there's parking on the rest of Main Street, actually on the sides. But I think that having the eating area right in front of the business that's going to be serving it, like Kennedy's and Samino's and the ice cream shop, you're going to be better off. The ice cream shop is already going to build a seating area behind it, and the post already has a seating area behind it, but it would be nice to have it out in front of it also. And I do know that there are restaurants that you can walk in and submit an order and get your food and leave. I've done it myself. So I don't know why we can't do it in Winnebago where you can walk in and order and then take it out. But either way, they could bring it out to your table also in the street. The one thing I would caution about is if there's going to be traffic going south on Benton Street, we have to have a buffer area between the seating area and the traffic for safety reasons. And I would not recommend any parking available on South Benton. In that case, I would just have to be a flow through if we allow any traffic at all on it, and keep it away from the seating area where people would be eating.
Good, and then we can build the parking lot behind the village hall. Right, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and
That's a little bit just as far to walk as it would be. It's even further to walk than it would be all the way down the end of the street.
It's about right.
One way or another, you're going to be walking to get to where you need to go if you're going to eat downtown.
Well, I'd rather walk and let my food be warm than wait for food to come to me that's cold.
Right.
The food would come out to your table, right? You just park in the parking lot, walk down to the restaurant, sit down, and get your food from the restaurant right there. It would be hot.
No, I was referring to if that table was on the new parking lot to the east of the village hall.
Oh, yeah.
Or down in the trailhead.
No, I think you want the seating right in front of the restaurant that's serving it. I mean,
I agree.
Chad, are you still on?
I am.
How many of those safety barrier things that we have to block off the streets in order to be able to have the buffer, as Paul says, to make sure that the cars are only running down where basically the parking is on the east side of Benton?
Yeah, we only have 2 of the type 3s. They're very, very, very expensive. And if we were going to leave it open to traffic, we should probably have some water filled barrels and things like that to make it safer. I did send the email
That would be better.
earlier today that basically says exactly what Mr. Ellison's saying. And then it would be up to the, obviously it would take a little further insight to say whether or not you truly wanted to keep the traffic, because there is an alley half a block east and half a block west of Benton Street, and no large deliveries are done down Benton Street. I really think that closing Benton Street, more or less, and going with what Mr. Ellison has suggested, which is the same mindset I have, is close Benton Street, get those folks to put their tents and seating immediately in front of their businesses. And there's almost, 60 to 70% of the parking in what we made last year. The trailhead parking has 14 stalls plus handicap, plus there's 5, realistically 6 without a business, and Phil Whitehead's building there, and another 4 in the new parallel parking we placed. So there's over 24 parking spots immediately adjacent to the north. Very easy walk, brand new sidewalk. The right course of action here, logistically wise, is closing Benton Street. And we could, of course, allow, or my recommendation or thought process, if you didn't want to close the whole street, close the western half. There's actually a bump out at the north end, so that reduces the traffic flow width, and you could have a pedestrian, a walkway open, but if you leave it open at all, cars will try to navigate it. So again, I really think the only problematic business is Reflections of Hair Place, and they do have the 60 by 60 pad that we've already constructed. We will be extending the other parking area when weather cooperates. So there'll be more overflow parking there east of Village Hall, but I really truly believe the parking is nearly there now if we simply close Benton Street.
Well, I guess another factor to keep in mind is, even giving them as much outdoor space as we can, they're still not going to have the seating capacity that they would have had, 6 months ago, 5 months ago. So we really don't need as much parking, because limiting the parking may work hand in hand, because they are only going to have so much space available for patrons in the first place.
Right. Well,
Also, I just would like to say, from a liability point of view, you do not want to have traffic going down that street. That's a street that's a village street, and if something happens, you've got several tonnage car against people sitting there. And I can tell you also that there have been studies. I know Rockford likes these. They're not called portlets. They're something like that. But there have been a lot of studies, and that there have been a lot of accidents when they have traffic going through, when they have those. And here we don't have nearly that same type of barrier. So certainly from a legal standpoint, my recommendation would be close Benton Street. This is a small town. They're only walking a couple of blocks maximum. It shouldn't be a big deal, I don't think. when you compare
Correct.
the.
Well, unless you look at the patrons that go to Reflections and they're older ladies and things, that's the only drawback to that. I agree. There shouldn't be any. If you're going to close it, you need to close the whole thing. But you're giving an advantage to other businesses and taking the advantage away from one business. You're giving the
Is it-
opportunity for the other businesses to create more business, so they have the opportunity to be open and provide that, and you're almost restricting the other business.
Would it be possible for where say that you closed Benton Street or wherever the nearest parking would be, that you would put up temporary signs for Reflections customers only? A few. I don't know how many people they have in there at a given time, but then at least they wouldn't potentially have to be walking a couple blocks.
I would agree that's something we should try to accommodate.
Yeah, but you see, there's a little problem there. Directly behind Reflections, everybody thinks that belongs to Reflections. It belongs to Mark Miller, and that goes up to the adjacent blacktop, which is behind to the south of our village hall. And that first piece of blacktop that's over there, you think that belongs to the village. It does not. It belongs to Mark Miller. If you look and follow the lines, Mark owns about 6 feet from the back door of Reflections, clear out to about maybe 20 feet. What do you think, Chad? Is that 20 feet from the building?
Yes, very nearly.
Yep.
I'm not talking about going on anybody's private property. I'm just saying wherever the nearest public parking facility area is, and perhaps there could be temporary signs that for the Reflections customers, they would be reserved. So they would be walking the least amount of space from a public area to get to the Reflection.
Yeah, there's also, I think, 4 handicap parking on Benton Street. Is there not? Is that right, Chad?
There is, but if we close the street, that's not accessible.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, you'd be able to put handicap parking on Main Street, on the south side of Main Street, right by the Village Hall and State Farm. There you would be able to do your handicap parking. Also, you could do on the other side where the park is to put the Reflections parking only. That way you can accommodate them. That would be the closest to them of a hard surface. If they're in a wheelchair, handicap, anything like that, walker, they'd be able to get to that point easier, I guess.
Yeah. I think the ruling is, if I'm wrong, but isn't it handicap has to be within 100 feet of the business? Is that right, Chief?
Well, we have a business right there, which is State Farm, so we could have a temporary handicap space right by State Farm. We could have 2 spaces right there that would be on the south side of Main Street. I mean, I would think that we could designate it as a temporary place for handicap parking. And it would be for any user, anybody that is there. And then we could, like Stan said, maybe on the north side of Main Street, have temporary signage that has maybe 3 spots that would be for like certain designated hours or whatever would be for patrons of Reflections. But I think that somebody needs to reach out to owner of Reflections to see if, first of all, what her stance is on blocking off Benton Street. She may or may not be in favor of it. And then secondly, finding out where she would believe her customers would be best suited to park, whether it's in our nicely paved parking lot or whether it is on Main Street. So I think having her input is really going to be critical in this, so that we, if we do block off Benton Street, we're incorporating her ideas as to how we're doing it.
The other issue.
Can I chime in? That don't forget the physical therapy operation on the corner down there and Banassi. There's some parking there, but generally the physical therapy people park on Benton Street at the end of it. You know what I mean? So they'd have to leave. They'd have to come around the corner and park on Soper or somewhere. I don't know. But don't forget the physical therapy operation there.
Right.
The other issue that you have with the handicap parking is we would have to comply with the state rules for the markings. You know,
Right.
when I was talking about reserved for Reflections customers, that's no more than just putting up a sign. But when you are talking about handicap parking spaces, you have to meet all of the state requirements for how that space would look.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's only to enforce it, right?
I'm sorry?
It's only to enforce it. We could put a sign that says temporary handicap parking. We just can't enforce it and bring it to court, but we can put a sign there, can't we?
Well, my concern with that would be, because I was thinking about that as everyone was talking, but my concern with that would be is that you then have a handicapped person that comes to park and can't truly use a space that you've made the representation is for handicap parking, because assuming that it doesn't meet the parameters, you know, where you have the hash marks next to it so someone in a wheelchair could get out and all of that sort of thing. That's where I was coming from, that someone challenging it who's handicapped and gets injured because we have an improperly marked handicap spot.
Frank, Paul, I'm signing off. I'll come back in later.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Have we beat this one good enough, Frank?
We need to reach out to Reflections owner, and I don't know if anyone knows her very well to be able to contact her.
The only one I know is the person that runs the nail salon down there. She just lives down the block here. I can do that. Yeah.
So we can also have one of the officers talk with her that's on. Jeff, you might be able to speak with her, seeing that we saw her this morning. I don't know how you feel about that.
I could definitely make contact with her. They're getting ready to open up and start working, so I'm sure she'll be here more often. So I can approach her and put this out to her and see what she has to say. That's no problem.
Okay. Fine.
So just so I have an understanding from the trustees, you're not really wanting to block off Main Street. Part of it is what Chad had said before about that's an area where a lot of the businesses have their heavier trucks come down that road. It's the only rated road we have in the village to allow the heavier trucks. But then what we're looking at is trying to block off all of Benton Street so we don't have any traffic that possibly could interfere with the patrons. And we would want each business to have seating as close and directly in front of its building as possible. And whatever they need to do, whether it's keeping track of the alcohol, I don't know if we need to have fencing because we'll have the barriers. But are you all okay with that type of a setup if the owner of Reflections is agreeable and we can work something out with her?
Yes.
Yeah, if all the requirements can be controlled and put in, to meet the intent of the, guidance from the state, I'm 100% in support as long as we don't compromise other business owners in the process.
Great. And also for accessibility of the fire department.
Correct.
And I would just ask Jeff if he's got any concerns since we're already taxed on the police front.
Jeff left at 6:18.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Never mind.
No, again, Nick is still on here. Can we just get him to comment if he sees anything from a policeman
Somebody
standpoint?
just came on.
Right.
Sorry. I'm back on. This is Jeff. I'm back on. I hit the wrong button on the phone.
That's right. Julia Ward had a question for you.
Go ahead.
Jeff, I was just wondering if you have any concerns with the police being more taxed with this whole open or closed street and so forth.
Well, I think you're going to have to restrict the ability to people to egress and, get in and out of here. I mean, if you look at what Tony's did, they have a small area up there where they put like a pergola up, and it's fenced. So there's really only one way in and one way out. I mean, if you don't do that, you're going to have the problem where they're going to want to walk from one business to the next, with whatever, or they're going to walk away with things. I mean, just like you would treat a beer garden, I think you would have to put up some type of barrier to limit people just to be able to walk away.
Well, I think Jeff brings up another point that he didn't say directly, but by his words, we better be on a similar requirements for these other business owners than what Tony's had to do. Otherwise, we're going to get some pushback there that they put all this effort and control into their place, and we didn't apply the same thing to others.
Right.
Yep.
So
and really, Jeff, my what I intended on my question is, do you think this is going to tax your police force more? I mean, are you going to do you envision it causing problems for staff?
I don't think so. I think people want to get out. They want to do things. It's just going to have to be something to monitor, just like we do everything else. For sure, the first few times that they do it, I mean, you're not going to have every day that's going to be conditions where people are going to want to sit outside. It's going to rain. People aren't going to want to do that. So, I think it'll be okay. And I'm willing to let it try. If we start having problems, then we can look at it a different way. But I think most of the people are going to be happy that they can go out and have something to drink and have something to eat from a restaurant instead of having to eat at home.
Okay.
Are you anticipating then that we will try and find out from the possibly affected business owners, come back with a plan and try and approve this at the regular board meeting on Monday, May 8th or June 8th?
We can discuss it.
And then, because I'm not sure we're in a position to pass anything tonight without finding out additional information.
Yeah, there's too many open issues to be able to render any decision.
Yeah.
I think the consensus is we're here to work with the business owners, but there's a lot of technical requirements that got to be worked out. Technical and legal requirements.
Right, and I did forward to Mary and to, I think, some of you or all of you, the ordinances from some various communities that have non-home rule, that have outdoor dining. And so I think we may want to look at that. I know some places issue permits for this. So whether we decide to issue a permit or not, that's going to be up for discussion. I'm not sure we really need to issue a permit. We just, I think, would put in an ordinance that we're allowing businesses to put tables on Benton Street if that's the way we go, and then require the type of fencing that's going to be needed, whether it's a snow fence, whether, where the access points are going to be. I think that some of that we're going to have to put into the ordinance to make sure they adhere to it.
Well, and I read those ordinances that you gave, and they are very detailed and have a lot of restrictions that we haven't been talking about. So I encourage you to read those, because I think for safety reasons, you have to go by certain of those things that are listed in there. To me, you can't just put tables out, put a few barrels and say, have at it. I'm just very concerned that what would happen. Understanding that businesses are in a predicament, but I would rather us take this maybe a little slower if we have to. I know that's not what they want to hear, but I don't want to rush into something and have something that's detrimental. But we'll certainly do our best. But I would encourage you to read that, because what I'm going to base it on is going to be something fairly strict, and then you can take out what you want. But I just think that we have to make sure we got all the appropriate rules in place.
One of the main things is that the businesses having insurance cover the business outside of their premises. So on the public street, if that's where we're going, we have to make sure that it extends out there.
And are they going to give us a whole and harmless an indemnification? Are they going to list the village as an additional insured? I mean,
Right.
those are all the types of questions, because somebody gets killed on that street, we got big problems.
You have to make accessibility to ambulances too for illness. Yeah, that's along with the fire. Okay, you got your information you need, Frank?
If everyone's okay with number 10 is where we're at, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think my only
Just
concern is, time really is of the essence here. And I agree with Mary. We don't want to rush it. And we don't want to have a haphazard, put up a snow fence and go. But I wonder if we couldn't even get another meeting in before the board meeting. Nobody wants to do that. But I think we got to do our best to keep moving this along.
And I just thought to myself here a minute ago that, I mean, you could put some of the responsibility of monitoring that fenced-in area for people walking out with alcohol like that on the owners of the businesses themselves.
Right, like you're saying, have a security person.
Yeah, someone that works for the business that monitors that and makes sure things aren't coming and going or being handed over fences or things like that.
Right.
Well, I think we have to keep in mind too, the monitoring of that's going to be a little easier based on the fact that they're still going to be limited to how many people they can have, because they have to be still socially distanced even outside. It's not like it's going to be a beer garden where you've got 400 people packed in. There's still going to be only groups of the maximum of 6. So you think that would be fairly easy for them to monitor to make sure no one's taking anything out.
I agree.
A lot of questions.
So is the game plan, just so I'm aware, the game plan is that both Chief White and Don Kimes are going to reach out to the owner of Reflections. Any other owners is anybody going to talk to before we go to put some sort of ordinance in place? I'm just asking because I want to know time-wise what we're doing.
Well, somehow we got to get some feedback to the other business owners and say, hey, it doesn't look like Main Street's viable. We're looking at this. What are your plans? If we approve this, what are your plans? Because we actually need the plans that they have before you can actually approve anything.
Right. Right.
Or maybe get a copy of the ordinance that we've been referring to, that other non-home rule municipalities said, hey guys, if we accommodate this, doesn't look like Main Street, but Benton may have a chance, but this is what you're going to have to comply with. Are you prepared for it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's key, because I have a feeling in their minds, because I understand they're trying to get their businesses up and running, and they just think we're going to put some tables outside, we're going to distance them like we need to, and we're good to go. Close down the street, we're good to go. And it's not that simple.
No, it's not. It's not that simple.
I mean, in other places in Rockford, you see doing this. It's places where there's a big parking lot, and they're just taking a part of the parking lot and they're cordoning it off. Well, that's simple. But here we don't have that, unfortunately.
We're actually expanding their business.
Kelly, I don't have all of the email addresses for the businesses downtown. I do have quite a few of the restaurant emails. Is there a way that maybe you could put together, or I could give to you an email that you could send out to every downtown business?
Yes, I'll get with Carrie with the business registrations to see if they've provided an email address.
Okay.
And then we should be able to. If not, then I can always call to find out if I can get one.
Well, possibly,
Jeff, I'll call you tomorrow morning. This is done.
Well, it's Julie indicated, and I don't know, everybody's got so much stuff going on or whatever, but if time is of the essence, it almost needs to be a little meeting set up with the business owners to, have a little powwow, all in the same room at the same time, but yet we're at the social distance. Whether you conduct it in a venue such as this to get some feedback and get them to understand what the requirements are going to be, and if we could do that, is that something that they could fit within there. But so the first step is certainly getting them the information of knowing what they're, representative of what they're going to have to comply with.
Right.
Well, I can tell you, I'll work tomorrow and I'll then coordinate with Frank of what at least I see the requirements are. Now, maybe some of these are a little bit more stringent, but we don't want to have a meeting and then we don't know exactly what we're telling them, obviously.
Exactly. And like you said, too,
that's not productive.
Put the stringent requirements on there, and then we know strategically where we may back off a little bit.
Correct, but more of what is actually required. Have these places gone above and beyond, or not? So that's what I'll work on.
Okay, I'll wait until I hear from you. This is Don.
All right. So yeah, Mary and I will coordinate
we'll
that.
coordinate that. But I still think, certainly in the meantime, we need to have these other reflections and possibly the other affected business owners, non-restaurant business owners spoken to, because if there are other issues that they have that we're not even thinking about, we need to know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I'm giving you advance notice. You may not have your draft of your solar ordinance, but I think that's got to wait.
That's priorities and times that you got to keep reordering, and I think that one can probably move back a little bit.
Yep, that's got to move.
Yeah. Okay, we're done with number 11. Let's go to number 12.
Number 11. Number 11 we really didn't address. That's mixed drinks on carryout. That there is a statute that's addressing that, but it has not been passed yet. But is that something that the village would want to consider, is to allow mixed drinks to be taken in carryout? We allow, beer or non-mixed drinks to be sold and carried out.
I would be of the opinion we would try to potentially accommodate number 11 if we resolve this outdoor eating and outdoor drinking. I would not be in favor of accommodating it to leave the premises by way of vehicle.
Okay.
I can also tell you that the pending legislation has so many restrictions of what you have to do when you hand that to the person to take into their vehicle. I don't think it's worth it for these businesses, for the little that they're going to sell in a small community.
Not what I read. Okay.
All right. So nobody's really interested in looking at that, and that's fine. We can just not worry about that. We'll focus on outdoor dining for our current restaurants.
And that's what we'll put on the that. Frank, do you want to call another meeting, or what do we need to do before the next board meeting?
Which is only 7 days away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we see what we find out?
I think if Mary and I and Jeff White and through Kelly trying to contact or get the business information to us, if we can coordinate and talk to them, maybe I can set up a special meeting with the business owners just to talk to them, see what they have to say. Then we can bring it back maybe for Monday night.
Okay. Enough. You want me to put it on the agenda for Monday night, or are you going to take care of it in the president's report?
Why don't you have it on your items? But yes, we'll want it on the agenda Monday.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, now we're ready for garage sales, estate sales, and yard sales. I just read a big long article about that, and everybody is saying no because you could not enforce the spacing between people. So, looking for people's input, or we can discuss it. What do you want to do?
Again, Frank, we had a discussion among the mayors and Dr. Martell, and how a lot of the municipalities in Winnebago County are working it is if there's a single family garage sale, that would normally be allowed because they can monitor who's coming to the premises, making sure that they're keeping separation. The concern is when you have the larger Route 75, Goodling Street sales, all of the larger ones, Mayor McNamara lives in Churchill area where they usually have 5 to 10,000 people show up. Obviously, those would not be allowed. And so I put it on here just to find out if you want to allow the individual garage sale, estate sale. I know the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations is going to be dealing with auctions and have guidelines for auctions. But if you want to have individual yard sales or not allow them, and I just put it on here to talk more about that if you want to have anything in place or not.
I should know this, but it's escaping me at the moment. Do we have a requirement for them to file with the village when they are having an individual garage sale?
I do not think so.
I don't think an individual one. I don't think we issue a permit. Some places do. We
Yeah,
don't.
because I'd say the only thing I would say is if you're going to do it, you still, you need to try to manage it that you don't have, 3 houses in a row or so, or you get so many on any one day that you are basically back to having a community garage sale.
Right.
If we say we're going to allow individual ones, and behind the scenes everybody gets together and they all plan it for the same day, you're back to a community garage sale.
And Mike, that's a good point. That's why you would want to permit garage sales or events like that so that you can manage who's having them and when they're having them.
Certainly, at least until this period of time is behind us, if you're going to accommodate them, I think it should be by permit.
Yeah.
In what I've read today, June 27th seems as though is a day of reckoning.
That's the plan, Don. That would be when we go into phase 4, but obviously it's going to be controlled by the metrics, and they're going to look at the science or the health and see where we're at with any spikes. And they're anticipating we'll have a spike from testing from back over Memorial Day. They also anticipate we'll have locally spikes from the protesters that have joined that didn't practice social distancing. So they are anticipating some spikes, but don't know. So we don't know how it's going to be for June 27th to move on to phase 4.
Yeah. I would make a motion that we defer any garage sales either as a community or as an individual through the end of June, and then we see what happens. We got so many other things we're working on. We don't have time to work on everything. When you look at the level of priority, this one seems to be a little lower. And again, I reiterate my motion that we not allow anything through the end of June.
Do we have a second?
This is Lori. I would second that.
And just for discussion's sake, I would say that farmers markets would not be included in that ban because they do have their own separate guidelines that have been put out by the county and by the state. Would you be in agreement with that, or do you think?
I think that's a little bit more isolated, a little bit more easy to control.
That's true.
They have a specific location.
Yeah.
Your motion said through the end of June. If you don't have if you're not going to make a decision at the June 8th meeting, why not wait till after the July meeting?
Well, that's fine. Make it whatever the date is after the July meeting. So
I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, I agree with you. So yeah, nothing before the 14th of July. I amend my motion.
All right.
Okay. Is that okay, Lori?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
Yes.
And just so we're clear, because this is a committee, this is something that the committee is going to be recommending to the board.
Recommending to the board.
So it's only the committee members of community development that are voting on this motion.
Correct.
Right.
So I will modify my motion again to recommend for board approval that no garage sales, estate sales, and the like be held prior to July the 14th.
Okay, those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
say aye, Mike.
Aye.
Good. It's passed. Okay, and I'll put that on the agenda for June. Now, I guess it's necessary. Do we have any new business?
I have nothing.
Frank, you want to go into executive session?
All right, so this is how we'll need to proceed. Kelly, what I would ask is that you stay in and host this regular cow meeting so that those that want to stay on can stay on there. And then we will exit out of this regular cow meeting and we will go into the executive session, which we have a separate meeting number. And for those that'll be going into the executive session, I would have is Sally Huggins, Paul Elson when he returns, Jeremy Graham, Mike McKinnon, Julie O'Rourke, Stan Malagranda, Don Kimes, Mary Gaziano, and Lori Morgan, and myself. Do we have anybody else that you think needs to be part of 3 or 5? Okay, if not, then I would say that those people's names that I read off, did each of you receive a separate email invitation from Kelly for the closed session?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
If somebody did not, then text me or text Kelly and we'll try and make sure that you get it. So we're going to sign out now. I'm going to try and open it up and be the host. And if we have an issue, we'll deal with it at that point. So we need a
Don't we have
motion.
to have a motion?
Exactly, Sally, we're going to go and have a motion by the committee members to go into executive session.
I so move.
And it's for the following purpose of
2 of them. Ordinance adopting the duties and compensation of building official, effective date of permit fees, and the appraisal for real estate properties from the Whitehead property.
So the exceptions are going to be under 5 ILCS 120/2 E. Under exceptions, it'll be number 1, the appointment, employment, compensation of a specific employee of the public body, which would be number 3, and then number 5 is the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. So those are the purposes to go in. So again, a motion, and then we need a roll call.
No, we need a second.
We need a second, okay.
Mike McKinnon, second.
Before we have that roll call, I guess I just want to make clear, because on the agenda, if that's what you're going into, it's talking about the duties and compensation of the village building official, but I understood it that there was the request to talk about other officials. Is that correct?
The intent is primarily the village building official, so we can restrict it to that.
Okay.
I guess, and then before we take the vote, will we exit out of this session, go into executive session, then exit out of that, and then return to this session?
Correct. So we will, when we exit out of the closed session, we'll come back into this one, and then any discussion and or voting on those 2 issues may take place, as well as addressing item number 4, if that will also be addressed, and then item number 6 for the permit fees. So we will be coming back in. That's why I'm asking Kelly to keep this open, and then anyone that's not invited to executive session can stay on, so they know when we come back into regular session again. So Don, if you want to go ahead and, well, Don's left. So those members, roll call.
Mr. Kimes? Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, so those that I've read off, go ahead and exit and we'll log in. And it's now 6:46 p.m. on June 1st, 2020.
Just give us a couple seconds or minutes to get back in.
Yep.
I don't know how to get out.
Yep, there she goes. Well, Sally, it's just me, you, and Carrie.
How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Lovely.
Lovely. How's the baby? Did you get holding time?
I did. Him and I took a nap on Saturday. It was great.
Still recording.
What?
You're still recording.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to shut off the recording. I was going to ask him, but he was exiting, so I suppose I could.